Okay, so with your permission, I'll start with the Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utpadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaguna Lalita Sri Vishakha Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev Chah Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurudinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Prasthaya Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvashesha Shunavadi Pachachade Shatarani. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for being with in this Bhakti Shastri Sangha this evening. So today is, as Rupa Raghunath Prabhu was mentioning, exciting week. We had Janmashtami, Nandotsav, Srila Prabhupada appearance day. Week before that, we had appearance day of Lord Balram. Coming up is appearance day of Srimati Radharani. So Prabhupada would say that festivals are the mother of bhakti. So they're designed in a way that all the ingredients of the bhakti come together. The association of devotees, prasadam, chanting, the opulently dressed deities, all of it come together. And
టెంపుల్ ఏం తిన్నారు? ఏదో ఒక పల్లె నిన్న టెంపుల్ అది.
So it naturally creates fertile ground for bhakti. And while this was not planned, but coincidentally, we are also starting the section of bhakti of the Bhagavad Gita today. And this whole section flows very, very nicely and very quickly. You'll see, because it resonates so much with our practices. Like Krishna speaks about karma and jnana and asthang, and we try and understand it theoretically, because we don't have that purity to follow the karma section of the Vedas. We don't have the sense control to follow jnana and the austerities to perform asthang. So we study them, we appreciate it theoretically. But as practicing devotees, the middle section, it speaks directly to our heart. So it's also a section that devotees relish the most. The devotees relate to also the most. And essentially what Prabhupada has done is taken the middle section and spread it out to the Bhagavad Gita. And so even when we talk about, if you notice, when we were discussing Astanga Yoga in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about bhakti. Right? So sometimes he talks about bhakti in the context of for how a yogi ultimately will become a devotee by the association of the mercy of a devotee, or he talks about how the process of Astang Yoga or Gyan are not practical and Bhakti is only practical. And the reason is that he is constantly wanting us to bring us to this platform that Krishna ultimately wants to bring us to. And in this section, we will realize why. That why is it that Srila Prabhupada and Krishna want us to come to the platform of Bhakti. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So the title of the chapter is Knowledge of the Absolute. So the focus in the middle section is Krishna. Right? So he starts off by giving us an understanding of who he is. So this middle section, it contains 6 chapters. So just a quick summary of the chapters. The 7th chapter is the knowledge of the absolute. The 8th chapter is attaining the supreme. The 9th chapter is the most confidential knowledge. 10th is the opulence of the absolute. 11th is the universal form. And 12th is devotional service. So you'll see a trend in these chapters, right? So Krishna introduces himself. So 7th and 9th chapter are very similar to one another in structure and content. A little bit more details, but they're kind of like image chapters. 8th is a bit of a detour from the flow in the 7th. But if you see the trend over here, that Krishna is introducing us to him. And then he's talking about the path to attain him. So just saying that Krishna is God, it's useful, but not useful enough. So if I go and tell somebody that there is a huge, large treasure that is buried somewhere, it's irrelevant information. But unless I tell the person how to get to that place, that information is mostly useless. Right? So that's why Krishna, he talks about the most confidential knowledge, which is the path to attaining him. Right. So 8th chapter talks about really speaks about death, that the consciousness of the person at the time of dying determines the next destination. And the 9th chapter, it talks about the confidential relationship between Krishna and his devotees. It is also called confidential because it is the most bewildering aspect of Krishna. That Krishna at one point, he is the emblem of dharma. He is the personification of the Vedas. So he is the most right in everything. But then we see the emblem of dharma stealing or telling lies or consorting with the wives of other people. And Krishna reveals that knowledge in this chapter 9. So it's confidential because devotees can understand it. And those who are not devotional will reject it or misunderstand it. Then the 10th, 11th, and 12th chapter, as you will see, establishes a trend. So the 10th chapter is seeing Krishna in matter. If you remember, in the opulence of the absolute, Krishna, he talks about many material things. And he says, either I'm the best of it or I'm the essence of it. Of the stars, I'm the moon. Of the things that have light, I'm the sun. Of the people, I'm king. I'm the ability in man. So he's presenting himself embedded within matter. So seeing Krishna in matter. Then the 11th chapter is seeing matter within Krishna. So the universal form, Krishna presents himself as encompassing the entire universe. Not just the universe, but everything that is happening within the universe. So not just a passive encompassing, like there is a sphere that holds the universe, but everything that is happening, past, present, and future, all the aspirations, all the interactions, the flow of time, everything is encompassed within. So everything that we see is within Krishna. And the 12th chapter is that having understood that all the matter is within Krishna, and Krishna is within all the matter, one surrenders to Krishna. After having understood how great Krishna is, one becomes a devotee of Krishna. So, shortest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, interestingly, the 12th chapter. Only two chapters have 20 verses, 12th and 15th, and very, very potent. So this is the trend that we will see in the middle section of the Bhagavad Gita. So let's take a little deeper dive in chapter 7. So as we saw, it's a small chapter. All the second section is actually the smallest section of the Bhagavad Gita. The first section is the largest, and we have done it. Second is the smallest, and of course, the third comes in between. The chapters are small. So hopefully my summation should be also relatively quicker, and it'll give us more time for discussion after that. So what's the connection with the 6th chapter? That the 6th chapter was Astanga Yoga, where Krishna spoke about attaining the super soul through the process of Astanga Yoga. Right? And then he talks about how the process, what are the prerequisites of it? Controlling the urges and the senses. One controls the urges through the execution of karma kand. One controls the senses through the execution of nishkam karma, leading to atmagyan. And ultimately, the process of Astanga Yoga helps in controlling the mind. And one then reposes the mind in the chosen destination. Now, Arjun finds the process not practical, right? So he says that controlling the mind is like controlling the wind. And Krishna agrees that yes, possible. Yeah, abhyasena to vairagena. He says with practice and detachment possible, but yes, it is difficult and but not futile. And then he talks about the destination of the failed yogis. Those in the initial stage, they take birth with the demigods, in opulent family, and those who are in the advanced stage, the yogarudas, they take birth in the family of devotees, and they continue their progress. So when Krishna ends the chapter, he glorifies that the best of the Astanga yogas are those who meditate on Krishna Swayam Bhagavan. Yogi Nam Api Sarvesham. Like the best of the yogis is those who meditate on me, Krishna, who is the basis of Paramatma. Right? So now that's the segue to the chapter 7. Right? So if you look at the progress Krishna is taking the jivas and us through, is first, he talks about piety. And then he talks about making the distinction between the body and the soul. And then he talks about seeing the soul. Then he talks about seeing the super soul. Now he's saying that I am the basis of the super soul. So now he takes the person to the next level, which is seeing Krishna. So Krishna will now, he steps into the spotlight. So far, who was in the spotlight? We, the jiva. It was all about us. The whole 6 chapters with a very few exceptions where Krishna speaks about himself, more to establish his credentials as the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? When Arjun says that, how can you have spoken this to the sun god? Then Krishna says, many births you and I have taken, but you don't remember, but I do. And Janam Karam Cha Me Divyam You Me. So he speaks a few verses in order to establish his own credentials as the speaker, not so much to step out. Because right now, Krishna is deliberately in the shadows and the jiva is in the spotlight. Now things change. Now Krishna steps into the spotlight and he will speak about himself. And these are the three main components that helps in advancement. For the jiva to know himself, for the jiva to know Krishna, and to understand the relationship between himself and Krishna. Right? So this is called Sambandha Gyan. And that is what Krishna is going to speak about. He has spoken about us, he will speak about himself, and he will speak about the nature of the relationship. That understanding is the basis of bhakti. So broadly speaking, the chapter is divided into two parts: knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna. Right. So as I spoken earlier, that Krishna has taken us through this journey of sakam karma, where the focus is in control of urges. Urges is sinful urges. And that is established by having faith in the Vedas, in the words of Krishna, not necessarily faith in Krishna, but just in the Vedas for selfish reasons. And that's the karma kand. And then that matures into Nishkam Karma Yoga, where one has also control on the senses, right? So control on the senses is that even when there is engagement that is prescribed in the Vedas, right? So the urges control, the Vedas control the urges, but when one is doing Nishkam Karma, then even when one is performing actions prescribed in the Vedas, one does it with detachment. Right? So this develops and comes from Atmagyan, that I am not the body, I am the soul. So one develops detachment from things that are related to the body. Then Krishna took us to Astanga Yoga, where in relation to control of the urges and the senses, we have now control on the mind. And this results in developing faith in the super soul, Paramatma Gyan. And really speaking, Paramatma Gyan is not, I put it over here, but it's not a thing in itself. Like, like Karma Kand and Atma Gyana is, the Atma Gyan is. But I put it just for the sake of continuity, that at this point, Krishna has come in and introduced himself as the super soul, as the indwelling super soul that is accompanying the soul. And Krishna talks about what is the symptom of one, the samadrishti, seeing the Paramatma in everyone, becoming affectionate to everyone because of seeing not only the soul but also the super soul, and developing affection for the super soul. So now Krishna has irrigated our heart, and the field is now fertile for Bhakti Yoga, where the focus is in the control of the desires. So what you'll notice is that from Sakam to Nishkam to Astang, there is a progression from urges to senses and senses to mind. Bhakti Yoga is kind of standing on its own, which is control of desires. And desires are a lot more subtle. So it's almost like the examples, one of the examples Prabhupada would say was, of a man falling in love with a woman or a woman falling in love with a man. So there isn't like a procedure for that. You can't say I'll do A, B, C, and then D is I fall in love. Now there are things that are conducive to it. There are things that are favorable to it. Association, mutual respect, service, etc. Prabhupada will give the example of arranged marriage, that there's no real love between the husband and wife when there is arranged marriage, but there is a framework that the husband and the wife, they serve each other in their own capacity and they care for each other. There is unification of interests, and then love appears. So despite all that, love may not appear because love is independent. And the flip side is that even if none of those conditions are present, love may appear because of the same reason, that love is independent. So Bhakti Yoga is developing love for Krishna. And what does it mean, control of desires? What it means is that one just desires the welfare of Krishna. So this is now a lot more subtle. So one can make this determination that today I will control my urges. And if the person has sufficient willpower, they can control their urges. If the person has even more willpower, they can control the senses, even perhaps the mind. But desires are so subtle that they can not be controlled by impositions. And one cannot think and say that from tomorrow I will love Krishna. But there is a process. The process of Bhakti Yoga is for one who at least have the desire to develop the desire to love Krishna. Right? And that's why the desires form the linchpin. And the basis of Bhakti Yoga is Sambandha Gyan, understanding one's own position, Krishna's position, and the relationship between the two. So one of the paths to Bhakti Yoga is this gradual advancement from Sakam to Nishkam to Astang Yoga. But we also have direct access to Bhakti Yoga because of the reason that we just discussed. That it's not dependent on anything that has been developed in the past. One may have full control of the urges and the senses and the mind. One may still not develop bhakti. And one may lack control of all these three. And we are all living examples of that. Right? We are definitely not, we cannot lay a claim that I have control on my urges and senses and mind. But we are practicing Bhakti Yoga, right? Mercy, because of the desire to develop the love for Krishna. So, since Krishna is appearing in the spotlight, how to know Krishna? Right? And Krishna talks about three ways, or three aspects rather, that one hears with faith and then practices what one hears. Right? And that is what will get us close to Krishna. So the process of bhakti, that's why they say it begins with Shravana Kirtan, Shravan especially, the hearing. In the Bhagavatam, there is so much glorification of hearing, and especially in the association of devotees, because that gives faith. But that itself is not sufficient. Right? So we don't want to become intellectual, armchair philosophers, but practicing what we hear with faith. So the faith is an important component. There are many people who will hear for a lifetime, but they are not practicing. Why? Because the middle part is missing, that they lack the faith. So they may sit and hear Bhagavad Saptas, they may sit and hear lectures, etc., etc., but then they may not be chanting, they may not be following any aspects of sadhana bhakti. And why? It's because that this component of faith is missing. And Prabhupada would say, how do you get faith? If you do not have faith yourself, then you borrow it from those who have it. Which is why Vaishnava Sangha becomes important. That here in the association of devotees, so you may not have faith, but those around you may have faith. And the process of bhakti starts with borrowed faith. That you might say that while I don't have faith, but this person has faith, so let me follow his lead. Right? When Srila Prabhupada, so for Janmashtami, I was talking to a senior Prabhupada disciple, and one of the common reference that I hear is that in the early days of Prabhupada's preaching, 26 Seconds Avenue, not many people understood what Prabhupada was saying. So this is now 66. Prabhupada speaking with a very strong Indian Bengali accent. See, when Prabhupada would speak Sanskrit while speaking English, the subject matter was alien to them. But this disciple was saying, we kept going back again and again, just because we got inspired by whatever Swamiji is saying. It seems to be important because he's so much enthused by it. Right? That's borrowed faith. They didn't know Krishna, they didn't know Bhakti, they knew the opposite of that, but they could see the faith in Krishna, in Prabhupada. And that's what inspired them. And of course, you borrow some money, you invest it, it grows, and then then after that you have your own faith, and you're ready to now to lend it to other people. So, so Krishna, he talks about himself, right? Who is Krishna? In summary, everything, right? And he kind of gives a little bit of breakup. So everything includes everything you see around you. In the five Pancha Mahabhutas, Bhumi, Rapi, Nalo, Vayu, earth, water, fire, air, ether, everything that we see is made of these five elements. And so Krishna says, they're all coming from me. And then there's the subtle, that we may not be able to touch, but we experience mind, intelligence, and ego. Krishna says, coming from me. And then Krishna says, you, the jiva, that is also coming from me. So essentially, this is what the whole material world is. There's nothing else in the material world. There is this gross aspect made from the five elements, there is the subtle element, and then there is the jiva. All of it is, Krishna says, I create, maintain, and destroy. Now, of course, the spirit soul, Krishna maintains, or one can say he creates. Jiva is like Krishna is eternal, Jiva is also eternal, but definitely the Jiva is dependent on Krishna. Krishna will not destroy Jiva, definitely maintains. But everything else, Krishna says, everything that you see in this material world, gross and subtle, I create, maintain, and destroy. Right. So, simply put, Krishna says that everything is coming from me. Everything that you see, everything that you experience, and everything that you are is coming from me. So, for the simple-hearted, Krishna consciousness is very simple. Right? One can understand Krishna's position, by simply understanding these few verses in the 7th chapter. But then, of course, Krishna will say later on that while it is simple for the simple-hearted, but not so much for those who are not simple-hearted, right? So, because Krishna is introducing himself for the first time, he presents himself in matter, right? So he says, I'm the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the fragrance of earth, the sound in ether, the heat and light of fire, the ability in man, the penitence of the ascetics, the syllable Om, the root cause of everything. Now, this list is by no means exhaustive. Right? One can't say that, well, Krishna only is these things, he is not anything else. But it is illustrative. Right? So initially, Krishna made this more universal statement, that everything is from me. And then, for example, I am the taste of water, the light of sun and moon. Right? And and as when we do the verses, we'll see that, or when you hear the discussion on the verses, then you will see that at a deeper level, Krishna is also saying that I am the cause of this. Right? So when Krishna says I'm the taste of water, Prabhupada says the essence of water is taste. And Prabhupada would say just that one fragrant fragment can take one back to Krishna. Rasuapo asmi, that I am the taste of water. Every time you drink water, you think that Krishna is the taste of water. And that itself will, Prabhupada will say, take you back to God. That is Krishna consciousness. When you see the light of the sun and moon and the fragrance of earth, it also means that Krishna is the cause of this. Then why is there the taste of water? Because Krishna desired it. Why is there light? Why is there sun and moon? Because Krishna desired it. Right? So Krishna is the essence of it, and Krishna is the cause of it also. And then he says this verse, this is the 7th verse in the chapter. Matata paratram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam sutre mai sarvam idam sutre manigana ivaha mai sarvam idam prota sutre manigana iva. So sutre manigana iva means that just like a pearl necklace is strung on a thread, I am the thread that holds together everything. And just like when the necklace is hung around one's neck, then all that is visible is the pearls, not the thread. So Krishna is making the same point, that while I am holding everything together, I am not easily discernible. If the thread is cut, then the necklace ceases to exist. The pearls get scattered. So Krishna he's holding everything together, right? He's the maintainer. Everything is resting on him, but he is hidden. And Krishna will speak about how he hides himself from those who are envious of him. Like somebody might, after hearing these verses, might say, well, if Krishna is everywhere, why don't I see him? Because Krishna is like the thread in the pearl necklace. So why does Krishna speak about himself, especially, and this is in the context of the 7th chapter? So he's giving us a way to become Krishna conscious, right? Because he's talking about things that are not very esoteric. He's talking about us smelling a rose, or us drinking water, or us seeing the sun and the moon. So these are easy ways. These are things that we do anyway. Like it is said, the most potent form of education is one that dovetails to your practices, that does not take you away from what you're doing. So Krishna is simply presenting himself, that you're drinking water anyway. Just know that I am the taste of water. A very easy way for us to become Krishna conscious. Most important point is that bhakti is only possible in the context of Krishna. Right? This he will develop later in the chapter, that bhakti means Krishna. So anything else, regardless of whatever austerities that is being performed, whatever strict practices that are being followed, whatever mantras that are being chanted, charity being given, unless it is in the context of Krishna, it is not bhakti. Anavilashita shunyam jnanakarmadi anavritam anukulena Krishna. And Rupa Goswami says it has to be in the context of Krishna. So there may be many practices that look like bhakti. Deity worship, right? Chanting of mantras, glorification. So there may be many practices that look like bhakti, but the object may be somebody else. That is not bhakti, it's something else. Right? So this is the important distinction that Krishna makes. And again, because we are in the material world, Krishna first speaks about his relationship in the material. And Srila Prabhupada makes this point that to know Krishna is to love Krishna. So once you know how great Krishna is, then you will inevitably fall in love with Krishna. Prabhupada gives the example of Rukmini Devi, that she had never seen Krishna. She had only heard about his glories, specifically from the Brahman in Dwarka and from some other people. And just hearing about Krishna with a favorable mind, she fell completely in love with Krishna, so much so that she bound Krishna with her love. That Krishna came all the way to steal her from her Swayamvar. Right? So that was the power of love. And that love was predicated on her knowing about Krishna. Like she had never met Krishna, they had no interactions with one another. She had never even seen Krishna from a distance. But all she did was to know Krishna by hearing about him. And then Krishna also talks about the consequences of not knowing him. Right? So the point that I made earlier on, that everything performed that is not in the context of Krishna is not bhakti, and the Krishna will explain that it will have a material outcome. It will never have a spiritual outcome. So now we come to the second section, which is not knowing Krishna. The first part was knowing Krishna. So Krishna talks about 4 kinds of people that reject him. So what are these 4 kinds? So Artho, Jigyasi, Artharti, Jnani cha, Bharatarshapa. Well, no, those are the 4 kinds that accept. Nabhajanti me mam muna. I forget the verse, but the 4 kinds who do not Maya Partha Jnana, and it'll come back to me. So we have the materialists who are too much invested in material things. We have the speculators who will read the Vedas and misinterpret it. That, yeah, it says over here, but actually it may mean like this, and who knows what this means. Then we have the atheists who will reject Krishna or reject the notion of God. And then there are those who are just sinful people. They're averse to God. Really speaking, they're scared because they do so many sinful activities. When you tell them there is a God, then they become scared that now I'll be held accountable for my activities. So they simply become averse to the notion of God or spirituality. And then the 4 kinds of people who accept Krishna. So they're the person who is desiring wealth. Now, one thing that you will notice here is in terms of the root cause, there is not much difference between the 4 kinds that reject Krishna and the 4 kinds that Krishna says accept him. So the materialists are after wealth, and also the artho, they are also desiring wealth. Then we have those who need help, right? So those who need help, if they do not get help, they become atheists, right? They say, okay, help me now, help me now, help me now. Let's say there's nobody to help me, so there's no God, right? So coming from the same place. Then we have the curious people. They are also like the speculators. The curious are trying to figure out this, that, why is this happening? How is this related? And then finally, we have those who are in knowledge. So the main difference between these 4 things is not that the persons who are turning to Krishna are have a more exalted urge. The difference is that those who do not turn to Krishna, they are always covered by this curtain of Maya, which is causing them to look for, so they may be looking for the right answers, but they're looking for it in the wrong places because of this influence of Maya, right? So the difference between the first and the second is where do they turn for sustenance? If somebody is a materialist, if the person turns to Krishna and says, I want wealth, he's on his path to become a devotee. But if the person simply steals or strives hard or simply just becomes a muda, working hard, he becomes a materialist. And a person who is seeking for help, if the person has faith and turns to Krishna, then he is on his way to become a devotee. But then, if there is a person who now begins to reject Krishna, saying that I wanted your help, you are not there, therefore, Prabhupada would call that the order filler mentality. That people would go to Krishna and say, fill this order for me. If you do not fill, I will go to some other order supplier. Right? So they become, similarly, the curious can become the speculators. That instead of going to the right source to satisfy the curiosity, they go to the wrong source, or they just take shelter of their own mind, which is fallible. So these propensities are there in varying degrees in everyone. So everyone desires, and wealth is a stand-in. It doesn't really mean, or doesn't only mean like money. Wealth means properties. Wealth means all the things that come along with. Well, like Dhruv Maharaj wanted a kingdom, right? So that propensity is in varying degrees in everyone. Everybody has curiosity. Everybody falls into difficulties there. But the difference is, where does one go to satisfy? That's when Bhagavatam it is said, right? Akama sarva kamo vi, moksha kamudar vi. Right? So whether a person is akam without desires, or sarvakam, full of desires, or mokshakami, or the person is desiring Krishna tivrena bhakti yogena. That if the person turns to Krishna, all this situation, it will result in devotional service. Now, fine, these are all mixed devotees because there is this desires, but they're glorified because they're turning to Krishna. Like sometimes devotees say, it is bad if I turn to Krishna and ask for help. Right? And the answer is, if you do not turn to Krishna, who will you turn to? Right? So there is no harm in turning to Krishna. The harm is that if you do not get what you want from Krishna, then you start blaming Krishna. That is harm. Like the relationship between a child and a mother. When the child needs something, where will he go? Goes to the mother. Sometimes the mother says yes, sometimes the mother says no. Now, when the mother says no, the child may throw tantrums, but does not mean that the child says that you're not my mother anymore. Right? The child will still jump on the lap of the mother. The next time the child needs something, he'll again go to the mother. The mother may say no. Next time the child will again go to the mother. So the relationship, the love of the child to the mother is not predicated on whether the mother says yes or no. That stands on its own ground. But here Krishna is actively encouraging us to turn to him with desires. Now, ultimately, we want to be at the platform of Shuddha Bhakti, where we turn to Krishna with only one desire, which is that of serving him. That's a little bit way off there. But until we reach that, we have to keep that goal in mind. This is what we do. That for everything we turn, of course, we don't turn to Krishna for like sinful desires, but for everything that we want within the realms of the Vedic injunctions, who else do we turn to? We turn to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So this is what gets one from the platform of those who reject to those who accept, turning to Krishna, not giving up the desires. Now, if you notice, it's not that Krishna is saying that when the materialists give up the desires or the speculators give up their intellectual gymnastics, not saying that. He's only saying that when these four people turn to me, preserving the same kind of desires, so then he says that they are all magnanimous souls. Krishna glorifies them all, right? He says they're all magnanimous souls, very dear to me. So in addition to the four, that Krishna speaks, there are two more kinds that do not accept Krishna. So one is those who worship the devas, right? So these are people who have faith, but not in Krishna, right? So they worship the devas, and those who want to merge into the Brahman, and then those who are desiring liberation, right? He talks about these three kinds. So those who worship devas, he calls them alpamedeshu, like less intelligent. Why? Because you worship the devas, you get something, it's temporary, it goes away, and then you're back to square one. Sometimes you're lower than square one. So lot of effort for little gains. Those who merge into the Brahman, or he says they're no intelligence, like he puts them into a lower category, that they have no intelligence. Why? Because they're much more advanced. And so if a person who is, let's say, weak in maths and he fails maths, then yes, should have worked harder. But if a person who is an ace in maths fails in maths, then person will be chastised more. What were you thinking? So those who want to merge into the Brahman, they're knowledgeable about the Vedas. They work hard to understand Krishna so that to reject him, or they use him as a stepping stone to go to the next step. So they have all the ingredients for success, but they mix it in such a way that they produce a toxic mixture at the end of it. So Krishna is more harsh on them, saying that they have no intelligence. And then the desiring liberation are the Brahmavadis. So these are those who know that there is Krishna. They know that there is the Brahman, which is Krishna's effulgence. And for whatever reason, every soul has different natures. For whatever nature, that is their desired destination, that they want to exist in the Brahmavadi, right? So they don't want to become part of Krishna. They don't want to merge into Krishna. They don't want to become God. They're properly situated in their understanding, right? But because of their intrinsic nature, they are just Om Shanti Shanti, right? They just want to be in transcendental calmness, right? So that's the third kind that Krishna says. So summary, the Krishna has spoken about the jiva, now he speaks about himself. And this knowledge is needed to practice bhakti. He first speaks about himself in the context of the manifest world, because that's what we are seeing around us. He speaks about those who accept him and reject him. Then the fact that the underlying tendencies are all in them, but the perfection is for those who use these tendencies to connect to Krishna. Okay. So the two sections in chapter 7 were knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna. How to know Krishna? Hear with faith and practice. So three things: hearing with faith and practicing. Bhakti is more potent because no prerequisites, and also the result that it gives is the highest result. Four kinds of people who accept Krishna: distressed, those who have material desires, inquisitive, and those in knowledge. Four kinds of people who reject: materialists, atheists, those who are averse to Krishna, and the mental speculators. And the two other kinds that reject Krishna are those who worship demigod and who are the Mayavadis. So that brings us to the end of the chapter. And I'm going to stop sharing. You see how I'm doing with time. Okay, so we have a little over 10 minutes, so we can use the time to have any discussion on this. Yes, Mataji, Shripagna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for the class. It was very nice explaining it. Now I can go and read with this understanding what I'm getting into. So, understanding the relationship with Krishna is Sambandha Jnana. That's understanding relationship with Krishna. It's a form of spiritual advancement, which is Bhakti Yoga. That's it, right? And that have the three components: the jiva have to understand himself. The jiva have to know about Krishna himself. Am I right?
Yes, and the third component is understanding the relationship between the Jiva and Krishna.
Krishna.
Right?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Jivere Sarupa hoy Krishna Nitya Das. Right? That relationship, understanding the relationship. Yes, so you're spot on in your understanding. Chaitanya Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Probably it's me. I'm just getting confused. When we talk about desires versus urges, can either of those, it seems like urges have always the negative connotation, versus desire could have a negative connotation or a positive connotation. Am I right? Or
Yeah. You're right. Also, desires are more subtle than urges. Right. So an urge is a manifestation of, or many urges is a manifestation of a desire. Right. So somebody has desires to enjoy the tongue. So that's a more intrinsic desire. It may manifest in the urge to maybe kill animals and eat it, or to eat excessive food, or to eat in an unrestricted way. So there may be a whole whole variety of urges that may manifest because of the desires. And urges are relatively in the sense they're easier to control by the yams and niyams. Like we see that in our case, right? Don't eat meat. So it's a simple injunction, it controls the urge there. Now, deeper behind that urge, the desire that we would like to cultivate is seeing everybody as a part and parcel of Krishna. The animals, this the samadrishti, the soul, we may not have that. So that desire may be difficult. We cannot will that desire. That from today I will see everybody, I will see all the animals also as a part and parcel of Krishna. But we can at least control that urge by subscribing to the do's and don'ts. And so that's why the urges are the first step. So it said that one who's not able to control the urges is Dvijapada Pashu, right? The person is at the level of an animal.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Rup Raghunath Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the nice class. So, Prabhuji, it was very interesting when you were explaining 4 types of people who take to bhakti versus those who do not, and how they are very similar in nature, but the intent behind them actually distinguishes their path. And I was just thinking, Prabhuji, is it possible that the same person, based on his intent on a given day, can exhibit both this kind of a propensity wherein he's taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backward, or vice versa, especially in case of a modern time? And I can speak for myself. I do not do the right practice every day, and one day it's favorable, and the other day, and many days it will be unfavorable. So can you talk a little bit about that? It's a gradual journey, but it can be 2 steps forward and 1 step backward based on the practice for a given day.
Yeah. It's a very valid realization, Prabhu, for practicing devotees, that our desire is to come to the platform of being completely dependent on Krishna for everything. Our material desires, our spiritual desires. In some cases we do, and in some cases we don't. Right? Sometimes we are able to establish the dependency, and it's not really like a switch that we say that for this now I'm dependent on Krishna. Right? We can think of it more like a dial. So even for practicing devotees, even for places where we think that we are not dependent on Krishna, the dial is more turned towards Krishna.
Mhm.
right? So how do we know that? And this we can introspect and see that in the life of devotees, just like in everybody's life, there are success and failures,
Right.
right? And they are much more pragmatic in taking both.
Mhm.
Right? If there is failure, they'll say, Krishna did not desire it. And if there is success, then they will say, there was definitely some mercy of Krishna. They may not be at the platform where they 100% subscribe, right? That this is completely because of Krishna's, or completely, the failure is completely, Prabhupada's, his whole factory burnt, and he said, so that's what Krishna desired. Maybe not at that level, but by the force of chanting, by the force of reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, association with devotee, we can, and introspection is a very important quality for devotees. Right? We should always introspect, especially during trying circumstances. Both trying in the sense when things are going our way and things are not going our way. And then we'll notice this difference, that our acceptance of Krishna's hand in both our success and failures, it increases day by day, year by year. Right? That is us moving from this side of Maya to that side.
Mhm.
Maya.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Very helpful.
Thank you. So Mataji, your name is S. Majumdar.
Haribol Prabhu.
Haribol.
My name is Shafali. Haribol. A very nice class. I had a question about, I think you were saying today that like the beginning in Krishna consciousness, if you don't have faith, you have to borrow faith from somebody else, from a devotee somebody who's already is a devotee who has faith. So is that called Ado Shraddha? I remember people saying that term, but I didn't really understand what Ado Shraddha means. Is that borrowed faith?
So if you look at the stages that are established in Bhakti, right after Ado Shakta is Sadhu Sangha, Tata Sadhu Sangha, right? So the Shraddha over there is some intense. So why would you even associate with devotees? Because there is some soft faith. Ado Shraddha is some soft faith. Either it is coming out of previous devotional service, Agyat Sukriti, accidental devotional service, right? So that kind of gets your foot into the door. That kind of gets you to go to the temple and sit down, right? Then Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha is the association of devotees. That's when the process of actively borrowing faith happens. That is why association is considered to be the linchpin of bhakti. Right? So we don't, with Ado Shakta, we don't have sufficient faith to practice. But we have sufficient faith to take some time out and go to the Hare Krishna temple down the street. Only that much faith. Maybe to eat the prasadam, maybe to check out. It's kind of interesting when you ask people, why did they come? Some people say, I heard there are many white men and women dancing over here. I came to see them dancing. Somebody would say, I heard they give free food over here. Somebody would say, I hear they have gorgeously decorated deities. So something that resonates with some soft faith they have. But then essentially with the association of devotees, you start borrowing faith from them, right? You see them, you see them practicing, you see the results of practicing in their day-to-day life, and then you get inspired to do it in steps. That's how all our, if you look back, that's how all our spiritual journey began. We got the association of devotees, we got inspired by them, and we continue to take that inspiration. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Mugdha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Sorry, my name is Tina. I forgot to change the name. Yeah, Prabhu, my question is like a pure devotee, I can say like that person is not influenced by the material nature, but as like Prabhupada mentioned or in scriptures also they mention like what percentage of your salary you need to save for the God, what percentage of salary you need to save for yourself. So we are not doing like that. So I'm little confused. Are we still influenced or not a pure devotee, or what about demigods? Little this everything is going on in my mind.
So, uh, so just like everything, bhakti is a process, right? So, at some stage, we have a little faith in Krishna, and then we have a lot of faith in the material aspect, right? We say, and I think one of the things is, how much are you saving to take care of yourself? And if you're saving, that means, does that mean you don't have faith in Krishna? Because if you really had faith in Krishna, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right, he would say that you should not save from one meal to another. Even that was, he was of course sannyasi, but that was his mood. So while we are aspiring to be at that stage, we have to recognize the stage that we are at. That we have a little bit of bhakti, and we have a lot of material contamination, or we have a lot of faith in the material aspect of our existence. That's the reality which we are in. Now, what do we do with that reality? We have faith in the process of bhakti. We cannot turn the dial ourselves. And we cannot say today that now, instead of having 10% bhakti and 90% material faith, tomorrow I'll be 25% bhakti. It doesn't work like that. Just like we gave the example of love, nobody can say that tomorrow I'll double my love for the person. But then the person might say that, let me spend time with the person, let me get to understand, etc. And then love will blossom. So that's the process of bhakti. That through the process of bhakti, our dependence on the material aspect reduces, and that on the spiritual aspect increases. Now, important to understand that the dependence does not mean giving up. The dependence means not getting bewildered, right? So dependence does not mean that one says that now that I'm dependent on Krishna, I'm going to sell my house, sell my car, and I'm going to go out on the street and sit over there and say that I'm dependent on Krishna. It does not mean that. Dependent on Krishna means that I may have a big house, but I'm not bewildered by the wealth that I have. Or if for some reason I lose my house, I'm not bewildered by the loss of the house. Right? That is dependence. Right? So one should not think that I have $100 in my account and I gave $10 to the temple. So which means that I'm a 90% materialist and a 10% spiritualist. What one should think, that how proud I am of the $100 that I have in my bank, and how bewildered will I be if that $100 are taken away. And if that is reducing, that means you can understand your bhakti is increasing. That is the desire part that is changing. Okay, thank you. So we'll take one last.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. We'll take one last question.
Hare
Radhika Bhakti Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, amazing class. It was very clear to understand and follow. My question is, Prabhu, I always like how Arjuna surrendered in second chapter, right? And that's after surrendering only everything started the conversation. So when you talked in today's class about desires and all that, so I was always, I had this confusion always. So surrendering means 100% surrender, there is no in between, or
So thank you, Mataji. Very good question. So as I noted earlier on, that the reason that Krishna begins to speak about, when he speaks about bhakti, he speaks about the four kind of people who are surrendering to him full of material desires. And he's glorifying them. He's saying that they're dear to me, they're magnanimous, I consider them to be favorably, right? Later on, by the time we reach the 9th chapter, and especially in the 12th chapter, he starts talking about Shuddha Bhaktas, like those who surrender to him only with one desire, which is to serve Krishna. So he establishes this spectrum for us that, yes, you begin to surrender with me from the platform that you're at. Prabhupada would say, go to Krishna. So there's this famous slok that Prabhupada kind of made up himself. He combined 2 or 3 sloks and he said that yena tena prakarena, so this is Narad Muni speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Prabhupada modified it, that one way or the other, if one surrenders to Krishna, one acquires perfection. Right? And who are the people who are glorified in this? That Dhruva Maharaj surrendered to Krishna full of material desires, right? And very passionate desires. I want a kingdom greater than my father, greater than my grandfather. I'll show them who the boss is, right? Very strong material desires. But he surrendered to Krishna, right? And the sages of Naimisharanya, and so different examples are given. So the process of surrender begins with us turning to Krishna. And when we turn to Krishna with this conception, and we practice bhakti, then our surrender becomes purified. Right? That's the potency of the process. We cannot will it. We cannot say that from tomorrow onwards I will have no desires. It's not going to happen. Right? Right? But what will happen is, if you practice bhakti, it will happen. And how do we know that? Because we can see that in our own lives. I was making that point that introspection is very, very important for devotees to make progress. Because one of the VIHE lectures was making this point, that you can look at your nails every day. You will see no difference, but your nails are growing. How will you know that? If you take a picture of your nail and then take another picture of 30 days, right? If you see it every day, no difference. That is the power of introspection. When you see yourself in a situation and say that, what would I have done 10 years ago, 20 years ago in this situation, and compare it to what you're doing now. And when you see the difference between the two, then you will see the power of bhakti manifesting in your own life. Then you will see the presence of Krishna in your heart, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. So we'll end over here. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Thai Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so
Hare.
much.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna,
Thank you so
Prabhuji.
much,
Thank you.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much
Hare
for the
Krishna.
class.
Thank you so much.